For most of the modern economy, there has been a pretty simple formula for building a good life. Get a good education, get a good job, work your way up, buy a house, save and invest, retire. And for a long time, that was a pretty reasonable strategy. But I think one part of that formula is becoming much less reliable. Your employer used to be the primary engine of your economic security. I don't think that's going to be true for as many people in the future. And that doesn't mean everyone needs to quit their job and become a startup founder. It means something more important. The ability to own what you create is becoming dramatically more valuable, and technology is making that easier than it has ever been. The interesting thing about today's economy isn't simply that companies are firing people, it's that companies can increasingly do more with fewer people. Software has automated administrative work. Globalization allowed companies to outsource and coordinate work across borders. Cloud computing eliminated enormous amounts of physical infrastructure. And now AI is beginning to automate pieces of knowledge work itself. This doesn't mean there won't be jobs, there will be. But the bargain is changing. A company doesn't necessarily need to give you a 30-year career to get enormous value from you. And you don't necessarily get security in return for being loyal. We've already seen this in waves of layoffs, restructuring, and flatter organizations. So the old question was, how do I get the best job? The emerging question might be, how do I make sure my entire economic life isn't dependent on one employer? This is where technology creates a fascinating counterweight. Starting a business used to require a ridiculous amount of infrastructure. You needed an office, employees, a phone system, warehouses, distribution, advertising, accounting, maybe a bank loan, and most importantly, access to customers. The internet demolished much of that. Today, one person can create a product, build a website, find customers, take payments, advertise globally, use cloud software, outsource specialized work, and deliver the product without building a traditional company. The OECD notes that digitalization can help small firms reach global markets and even create born global businesses that achieve scale without large employee counts or large amounts of physical assets. And AI is pushing that leverage even further. A person who used to need a designer can easily generate designs by themselves today. Someone who needed a programmer can prototype with AI easily today. A small business can automate customer support, marketing, research, and administration. The cost of trying to build something has fallen dramatically, and that is a much bigger deal than it sounds. We're entering an economy where the distinction between an employee and a company can get surprisingly blurry. A person can sell consulting to customers in 5 countries, run a newsletter with tens of thousands of readers, build software with a tiny team, sell products globally, create an audience and monetize it, operate an agency with contractors instead of employees, or build a small business that earns $5,000, $10,000, or $20,000 a month without ever looking remotely like the traditional corporation we grew up imagining. That doesn't mean these businesses are easy. Most fail. And self employment can bring more financial uncertainty, not less. OECD research finds that self employed workers can face worse job security and financial well being than employees, particularly solo self employed workers. But something fundamental has changed. The amount of economic output one person can potentially control has exploded. And this is the part I think gets misunderstood. I don't think the future belongs to entrepreneurs because everyone should become a founder. Most people shouldn't. Running a business is stressful, uncertain, and often less financially attractive than having a great job. The deeper change is the rise of economic ownership. You can own a business, you can own equity, you can own intellectual property, you can build an audience, you can create a product, you can own financial assets, you can develop a skill that you can sell directly to customers anywhere in the world, and all of these give you something an ordinary salary doesn't: a claim on value beyond the hours you're currently working. That's leverage. And leverage is becoming incredibly important. Imagine two people, both earn $100,000. Person A gets that entirely from one employer. Person B earns $70,000 from a job and owns a business that generates another $30,000. They may have exactly the same income, but economically, they're in very different positions. If person A loses the job, almost all of the income disappears immediately. If person B loses the job, they still have an asset producing cash flow. And over time, that business might grow. This is why I think the future isn't necessarily about employees versus entrepreneurs, it's about dependence versus optionality. The more sources of economic value you control, the more bargaining power you have over your own life. This also connects to something we've talked about before: the world's opportunity map changing. The internet doesn't just let you work differently, it lets you sell to places where you don't live. That's an enormous advantage. A person earning $5,000 a month from clients in the United States doesn't necessarily need to live in the United States. They could live in Thailand, India, Portugal, Colombia, Vietnam, and suddenly the economics of that business look completely different. You have a global revenue base and a local cost base. That's one of the most powerful forms of geographic arbitrage the internet has created. And it means entrepreneurship isn't necessarily just about getting rich. For some people, it's becoming a way of escaping the geographic limits of their local economy. But there is a serious downside to this future. We shouldn't romanticize it. If everybody becomes a contractor, freelancer, or solo entrepreneur, we could simply end up transferring risk from companies onto individuals. No guaranteed salary, no predictable benefits, no job security, potentially no paid leave. And the OECD has explicitly warned that new forms of self employment and platform work can create weaker social protection and bargaining power. So I'm not arguing that employment is going away. I'm arguing that ownership is becoming a more valuable complement to employment. The smartest career strategy for a lot of people may not be quit your job, it may be use your job to build something you own. For the industrial age, the formula was something like education led to a job, led to a salary, which led to retirement. The emerging formula could look more like this: skills leads to income, leads to ownership, leads to optionality. Get really good at something, use it to earn, then try to convert some of that income and expertise into things you own. Maybe it's a business, maybe it's equity, maybe it's intellectual property, maybe it's an audience, maybe it's investments, maybe it's a tiny company that gives you an income stream independent of your employer. And the beauty of technology is that you don't necessarily have to choose one forever. You can be an employee and an entrepreneur, a doctor and a business owner, an engineer and an investor, a teacher and a creator, a lawyer and a software founder. The boundary between job and business is becoming much less rigid. So I don't think the future belongs to entrepreneurs in the sense that everyone needs to become Elon Musk. It belongs to people who understand leverage and ownership. Because if technology keeps making it easier for one person to reach customers, create products, and operate businesses at global scale, then the relative advantage of simply selling your time may continue to fall. Your salary will still matter, your career will still matter, and jobs will also still matter. But I think something else will matter increasingly. What do you own? Because the old school model gave you income in exchange for your time. The new economy is increasingly giving ordinary people the ability to build things that can create value beyond their time. And perhaps the biggest career mistake of the next decade won't be choosing the wrong job, it will be building a career where everything you earn disappears the moment you stop working. The question isn't whether you should become an entrepreneur, it's can you build a life where you're not completely dependent on someone else for your economic future? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel. This would really help us out. I'll see you in the next one.